Sometimes, what kills you isn't what the doctors are paid to look for. 20 of the world's top physicians had failed to solve the mysterious illness of a powerful billionaire woman. Sienna Walsh, the formidable CEO of Walsh Global Innovations, lay frail in a $4 million VIP suite at Mount Sinai Hospital. Machines beeped steadily. Leading specialists frowned, helpless. Death hovered close, even as the finest medical minds searched for answers in vain. Night shift. Nathan Price, an ordinary janitor, quietly pushed his supply cart into that room. As always, he was treated as invisible. The air reeked of antiseptic. But beneath it, Nathan caught something different. A faint metallic tang, sharp, crawling into the throat. He froze. His keen eyes landed on details nobody else noticed. Sienna's fingernails tinged yellow, clumps of hair falling out, pale lips quivering from stabbing stomach pains, her feet twitching uncontrollably. On the bedside table sat a sleek black jar of luxury Swiss skin cream, positioned like an expensive gift. Fragments began aligning into a dangerous picture. Nathan tightened his grip on the mop handle. He knew he was seeing what 20 doctors had missed. The question was, who would listen to a janitor? If you too believe that sometimes the truth comes from the most overlooked people, hit subscribe so you won't miss the next story. And don't forget to leave a comment telling me where you're watching from. New York, Hanoi, London, or anywhere in the world. I'd love to see how far this journey reaches, crossing borders and touching hearts. Nathan Price was used to people not really seeing him. Not because he tried to hide in the shadows, but because the faded blue janitor's uniform made him part of the wall, of the polished floor he scrubbed each night. At Mount Sinai Hospital, where billionaires and elites came to buy the most expensive medical care in the world, Nathan's presence was nothing more than a shadow gliding down the corridor. By day, Nathan was a devoted single father. He lived in a small Brooklyn apartment, its paint peeling, its wooden floor creaking with every step of his daughter. Lily, 9 years old, was the one light in his life. Her curly hair always tied high, her bright eyes and smile capable of dissolving exhaustion in an instant. Nathan never forgot Lily's gaze the day her mother died in a car accident. From that moment, he became both father and mother, working nights, learning to cook, checking homework, answering her endless questions about the world. He once had another future. 15 years ago, Nathan was a senior chemistry student at Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland. Professors saw promise in his toxicology research, even urging him to apply for a PhD. But after his wife's accident, he had to abandon everything to raise Lily, still an infant. From the dream of a laboratory, he fell into reality, gripping a mop, working endless night shifts in a hospital to keep his daughter fed. But knowledge doesn't vanish. It only sleeps, waiting to be awakened. That night, in Sienna Walsh's $4 million hospital suite, old memories stirred awake. Nathan mopped the floor while his eyes observed Sienna's hands on the white sheet. Her fingernails, faintly yellow, uneven. Instantly, his mind recalled an image from Toxicology of Heavy Metals, the textbook he once studied, a hallmark of thallium exposure. He shuddered, bending low as if scrubbing the bed frame. Lecture slides flashed in his mind: patchy hair loss, stomach pain, peripheral neuropathy, each symptom stacking together. This couldn't be coincidence. Nathan's gaze flicked to the bedside table. The glossy black jar marked Swiss exclusive sat prominently. He had seen it yesterday. Today it was closer, as though encouraged for frequent use. A nurse entered to check the monitors. Nathan drew a breath, speaking softly. "Excuse me." I noticed the patient's nails and hair seem—" He didn't finish. The nurse cut him off sharply. "Just do your job. We have a whole team of specialists already." Her voice was cold, her glance at his uniform enough to remind him of his place. Nathan nodded, returning to his mop, though his heart pounded hard in his chest. At the end of his shift, Nathan slipped a note onto the clipboard of Dr. Malcolm Whitaker, the arrogant, notoriously proud head of department. "Patient's symptoms consistent with thallium poisoning. Recommend immediate testing." The next morning, as he returned down the hallway, Nathan overheard laughter spilling from the conference room. Whitaker's voice rang out. "Apparently someone from the cleaning crew thinks he's a doctor. Thallium! Sounds like a spy novel. This is Mount Sinai, not high school chemistry." The room erupted in laughter. Nathan froze outside, his hands clenching the mop handle until his knuckles turned white. The familiar sting washed over him. He was just a janitor. Who would ever believe him? That afternoon, Damian Cross arrived. A tailored Italian suit, a polished smile, salt and pepper hair slicked perfectly back. A silver lapel pin gleamed on his chest, the mark of a powerful investment firm. "Nathan, make it quick," a nurse instructed. "Mr. Cross is here to visit Ms. Walsh." Nathan bowed his head, pushing his cart aside. From the corner, he watched. Damian set down a new jar of cream, identical to the last, and spoke with practiced concern. "This is the only one she tolerates. Very sensitive skin. Use it often. It helps so much." He placed it carefully, label turned outward like a subtle advertisement. Nathan's mind sparked. Too deliberate, too precise. Night fell again. Doctors debated, nurses rushed back and forth, but no one paid Nathan any mind. He moved quietly through the shadows, watching, recording every detail. The jar's shifting position, the clumps of hair, the fleeting spasms in Sienna's legs. He knew he stood at a razor's edge. Either he was right, or he was imagining things. But deep inside, every sense of the man who had once lived and breathed chemistry told him something was wrong. Nathan Price, the man invisible to the entire hospital, was the only one who saw it all. That night, the Brooklyn apartment lay in silence, broken only by the distant rumble of the subway. On the scarred old wooden table, before the scratches and stains, sat a cold meal tinged with a faint metallic odor. Nathan Price sat there, an old, thick textbook with frayed edges open before him. Principles of Toxicology, a relic from his student days at Case Western Reserve. The dim yellow lamp cast flickering light. Across from him, 9-year-old Lily worked on her math workbook, coloring in geometric shapes. Her tiny tongue peeked between her lips as she concentrated, a look that made Nathan both amused and tender. "Dad!" Lily looked up, her bright eyes sparkling. "Do you still remember this?" She pointed at a simple science drawing in her 4th-grade book. A test tube, chemicals changing color. Nathan chuckled, pulling the book closer. "Of course! I used to do experiments far more complicated than this." "Really? You studied this stuff?" He hesitated for a beat, then nodded. "Yes, I once studied chemistry. But then I had to give it up. Life didn't leave me a choice. Give it up?" Her head tilted, curiosity glowing in her eyes. Nathan took a deep breath. He didn't want to reopen the wound of the accident that had taken Lily's mother and forced him to abandon the lab for night shifts. He stroked her hair gently. "Yes, but knowledge never disappears. Once you've learned it, it stays here." He tapped his temple. "And when the time comes, it returns." Lily smiled, going back to her work. Nathan watched her, a silent resolve tightening in his chest. If he was right, A woman's life depended on whether he dared to step out from the invisible shadow or not. The next night on shift, Nathan studied Sienna's room carefully. A brand-new glossy black jar sat on the bedside table, its Swiss label gleaming under the light. A nurse had just applied it, Sienna's trembling hands spreading the shimmering cream onto her skin. When the room emptied for a rare moment, Nathan moved quickly. He slipped on gloves, scooped a small amount of cream with a sterile spoon he'd borrowed from the supply closet, and sealed it in a sample vial. His pulse thundered, sweat breaking across his forehead. He tucked the vial into his uniform pocket and returned to mopping as though nothing had happened. In an empty supply room, the neon light buzzed and flickered overhead. Nathan laid out his makeshift lab. A few bottles of cleaning solutions, some baking soda, scraps of litmus paper, a couple of tiny glass tubes pilfered from the hospital lab. "All right, remember, Nathan," he muttered, hands trembling. His mind replayed his old professor's voice. Thallium. Heavy metal, colorless, odorless, absorbed through the skin, will trigger a color change under the right reagent. Drop by drop, he worked. The acrid smell of chemicals filled his nose. His heart pounded like a drum line. 1 minute, 2 minutes. Then, the color began to shift. A distinctive hue spread through the solution, exactly as described in the textbook. Nathan froze, gripping the tube with shaking hands. He whispered, "Thallium. God, it's thallium." The realization struck like ice. A billionaire was being slowly poisoned, and only he could see it. But hope barely had time to form before the door burst open. A hospital security guard strode in, catching Nathan with the tubes and scattered supplies. "What the hell are you doing? This isn't your playground for science experiments." Nathan jerked upright, trying to hide the tube. I was just... This is a formal warning. You're a janitor, not a doctor. Stay out of medical business. Next time, you're out of a job." The guard slammed the door behind him. Nathan collapsed into a chair, hands still trembling. He knew one wrong step could cost him and Lily everything, but ignoring it meant letting Sienna die. His phone buzzed. Lily's name lit the screen. "Daddy," her sweet voice piped, "tomorrow's parent meeting. Can you make it?" Nathan swallowed hard. His chest tightened. He stared at the vial in his hand, Lily's face flashing in his mind. "Yes, I'll do my best," he answered, voice thick. When the call ended, he looked again at the shifting solution. Determination blazed in his eyes. From this moment on, there was no turning back. The small conference room in Mount Sinai's VIP wing was packed. On the wall, a large screen displayed Sienna Walsh's vital signs: unstable pulse, erratic blood pressure, liver and kidney functions plummeting. The air was suffocating with tension. Dr. Malcolm Whitaker, silver hair slicked back, pristine white suit beneath his doctor's coat, stood at the head of the table. He surveyed the 20 faces, every one of them a top specialist flown in by Walsh Global Innovations from Harvard, Johns Hopkins, the Mayo Clinic. "We've exhausted every standard protocol." Whitaker's gravelly voice cut through the silence, hard and sharp. "Autoimmune? Doesn't fit. Viral? Negative tests? Liver failure? Present, but not the root cause. If we don't find the origin in the next 48 hours, Ms. Walsh will—" He left the sentence unfinished, but death hung in the room like a shadow. The doctors spoke over each other in a rising din. Could be a rare form of lupus. No, ANA test was clearly negative. What about Creutzfeldt-Jakob? Impossible. Progression is far too rapid. They were at an impasse. The door creaked open. The squeak of a rolling cart echoed. Nathan Price pushed in his mop bucket. The room fell silent. 20 pairs of eyes turned on him. Whitaker scowled. "This is a closed meeting. Janitorial staff are not permitted." Nathan swallowed hard, throat dry, but stepped forward anyway. "I'm sorry, but I think I know what's killing her." Shock rippled through the room. A few doctors chuckled under their breath. Whitaker arched a brow, voice laced with disdain. "Oh, really? Then please, enlighten us." Janitor laughter flared, then faded. Nathan said nothing at first. He pulled a small test tube from his pocket, its contents clear but faintly clouded. He set it on the glass table beside a sheaf of handwritten notes. "This is a sample from the cream Ms. Walsh has been given every day," Nathan said, his voice unsteady but resolute. "When I tested it with a simple reaction, the solution changed color. The symptoms, hair loss, yellowed nails, nerve pain, organ failure, they all match textbook. This is thallium poisoning." A wave of murmurs spread across the room. Whitaker sneered. "Thallium? Ridiculous. We ran a heavy metal panel at admission. Negative. You think you know more than 20 world-class specialists?" Nathan clenched his fists. "I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying the test is wrong. Standard panels only detect when levels are high. This is microdosing, repeated exposure through skin. The levels stay just below detection, but build up, and the symptoms—" He pointed at the patient monitor on the screen. "Textbook. Every single one. Textbook?" Whitaker let out a contemptuous laugh. "You think flipping through a few old pages qualifies you to diagnose one of the toughest cases in America right now?" "No," Nathan answered firmly. "I studied toxicology. I dropped out of university. But knowledge doesn't vanish. And I see what you all missed." The room fell into taut silence. Dr. Siraj Ahmed, a young physician at the far end of the table, leaned forward, curiosity sparking in his eyes. "Wait," Ahmed said calmly. "You said small doses," repeated, "through the skin. That could explain why the panel was negative, and why the progression matches so precisely." Several experts turned to whisper among themselves. Whitaker's frown deepened. "Ahmed, don't get pulled in. We're entertaining a janitor." "But the logic holds," Ahmed shot back. "Do you have anything else?" Nathan pushed the sheaf of notes toward him. A timeline of Sienna's symptoms, matched with the days Damian Cross had brought the cream. Detailed observations, crude test steps, the precise color change recorded. Ahmed skimmed quickly, his expression hardening. "If this is thallium, treatment is completely different. What we're giving her now may actually be making things worse." Whitaker slammed his palm on the table. "Enough. We are not going to base decisions on a janitor's bathroom chemistry experiments." Nathan lifted his chin, eyes locked on him. "If I'm wrong, I lose my job, my future, everything. But if I'm right, and you ignore it, she dies." The words cut like a blade. For a long moment, no one breathed. On the screen, Sienna's heart rate spiked erratically, the machine beeping faster. Whitaker stayed silent, his gaze sweeping the room. He was cornered. Dismiss the janitor, risk the patient's death without trying, or accept and admit he'd missed it. Dr. Ahmed stood abruptly. "I'll order a specific thallium test, not a broad panel." He turned to a nurse. "Get blood and hair samples now." A few doctors hesitated, then nodded in agreement. Whitaker's hand tightened on his glasses, his face flushing red, but he said nothing. Nathan stood there, heart pounding so hard it felt like it would burst. He knew he had wagered everything, his job, his dignity, his daughter's future. If the test came back negative, he would lose it all. He drew a long breath, glancing toward the patient room where Sienna Walsh lay motionless. strands of shining hair scattered on the pillow. In his mind, he heard Lily's voice. "Dad, you have to do the right thing." Nathan had officially stepped into the confrontation. His evidence was fragile, but he had planted the seed of doubt inside the medical fortress. Either he would prove himself right, or every door would slam shut. The laboratory on Mount Sinai's lower floor blazed with light through the night. Technicians rushed about, gloves on, eyes fixed on the analyzer screens. Meanwhile, up in the VIP wing, the conference room was wrapped in suffocating silence. Nathan sat in a corner, mop leaning beside him, his hands clenched so tightly his knuckles were white. Dr. Siraj Ahmed stood near the door, eyes darting toward the hallway, waiting. At exactly 3 a.m., a female technician entered with a thick envelope. Her face was pale, her voice trembling as she nodded. Confirmed. Thallium. Abnormally high levels in both the patient's blood and hair. The cream sample is also positive. Those quiet words struck like thunder. The room fell deathly still. Whitaker stammered, "Impossible! We ran the heavy metal panel." Ahmed cut him off. "The standard panel doesn't screen for thallium specifically. This result is indisputable." He glanced down at the report, then looked directly at Nathan. He was right. Treatment orders shifted immediately. Nurses wheeled in dark blue boxes. Prussian blue, the rare antidote that binds and removes thallium from the body. "Start infusion now," Ahmed commanded. "We must stabilize her within hours." From the glass doors, Nathan watched the blue solution drip into Sienna Walsh's vein. Each second stretched like an eternity. He wasn't a doctor, but he knew in his heart. This was the life-or-death turning point. Meanwhile, security began reviewing surveillance footage. On the screen, Damian Cross appeared, immaculate suit, polished smile, as he entered the patient's room. From his pocket, he drew the glossy black jar. He opened it, dipped his finger, and spread cream onto his own hand in front of a nurse. "See? Completely safe. The very best for sensitive skin." The nurse nodded, reassured, and allowed him to place the jar on the bedside table. Then the camera zoomed close. The moment she turned away, Damian's other hand swiftly squeezed liquid from a dropper into the jar, stirring quickly. Barely seconds, but clear enough. The monitoring room froze. A guard clenched his fist. "We missed it right in front of us." By morning, weak sunlight filtered through heavy curtains. In the hospital room, the monitor now displayed steadier rhythms. Sienna Walsh's pale lips trembled. She's waking up," a nurse cried. Her eyes opened slowly, first clouded, then regaining their sharp, familiar gleam. The room seemed to hold its breath as the woman who once shook Wall Street came back from the edge of death. Nathan, standing quietly in the corner, stepped forward without thinking. Sienna's gaze flicked to him, her voice hoarse but still proud. "You saved me. Why?" Nathan didn't hesitate. His voice was low but firm. "Because my daughter needs to see her father do the right thing." For a flicker, her eyes wavered, pride colliding with gratitude, before she fell silent. No words, but the look alone was acknowledgement. The relief of her awakening lasted only moments. Less than an hour later, a group of men in dark suits swept into the ward, altering the atmosphere instantly. The FBI had arrived. Agents moved with crisp precision, eyes cold as they scanned the hallway. They exchanged words with hospital security, checked records, then entered the VIP wing. "We'll need statements from key staff," Agent Ramirez said, voice deep and controlled. "Including you, Nathan Price." Nathan stiffened. He had never imagined himself as a witness in a case of this scale. He quickly wiped chemical stains from his hands and sat at the small interview table. Ramirez opened a notebook, eyes locking on him. "We need to understand exactly how you identified the poisoning." Nathan drew a deep breath, aligning his memories. His voice wavered at first, but grew steadier as he spoke. "I recognized the symptom pattern from toxicology studies years ago. Patchy hair loss, yellow nails, neurological spasms, progressive liver failure, all textbook thallium. I secretly sampled the cream and ran a crude color test. It turned positive. After that, the doctors confirmed it with advanced analysis. Ramirez scribbled notes, never looking away. "And your background?" "Chemistry. But I never finished my degree. I left for family reasons. My daughter was an infant then." Silence hung heavy. Then Ramirez nodded slightly, not with scorn, but with respect. "Your insight saved Ms. Walsh's life and provided crucial evidence against Damian Cross. Very few could have done that. Even in our field, Nathan had no words. He only pressed his lips together and nodded. For the first time in years, he felt that his buried knowledge had finally been seen. Not long after, the FBI raided Cross's estate. Agent Ramirez and his team entered with grim faces. Damian Cross was brought into an emergency interrogation room. "Mr. Cross," Ramirez said, opening a laptop to play the footage. "Any explanation for this?" Damian smirked, straining to remain calm. "Just habit. I test it before offering." "Test it by adding chemicals to the jar?" "We already confirmed it. Thallium. And your motive is transparent." Ramirez flipped open a file. 3 years ago, Sienna Walsh rejected your billion-dollar merger on ethical grounds. Your stock collapsed. You lost your CEO chair. This was revenge and an attempt to clear your path to take Walsh Global Innovations. Correct? Damian's silence was answer enough. His face turned pale as 2 agents snapped cold steel cuffs around his wrists. Back in the hospital room, Sienna, weak but lucid, looked at Nathan differently now. Not as a shadow in uniform, but as a man who had seen through death itself. "You know," she whispered, voice faint but clear, "I despise when others try to decide my fate. But this time," her eyes glistened, "I owe you my life." Nathan lowered his head slightly, voice quiet yet steady. "I didn't do it for you. I did it for the truth. And for my daughter. I want her to see that her father doesn't stay silent in the face of wrong." They both fell into silence. Pride and gratitude converged into a strange mutual respect. Outside, reporters already swarmed. News leaked quickly. Tech billionaire poisoned, rival exposed. But inside the quiet room, only the steady hum of the ventilator, the beep of monitors, and the heartbeat of a woman pulled back from the brink remained. Nathan Price, the invisible man of polished corridors, had forced the world to finally see him. Winter sunlight filtered through the wide VIP windows, spilling across the spotless white sheets. The machines around Sienna Walsh now beeped in steady rhythm, no longer shrieking alarms as they had in the days before. Her skin had regained some color, her lips no longer drained of life. The stabbing stomach pains had subsided, her hair still falling in patches, but no longer in torrents. A nurse smiled as America's most powerful businesswoman managed to lift a cup of water on her own, her hand still trembling, but steadier than before. News had already begun to leak despite the hospital's efforts at secrecy. Tech billionaire saved at the brink. A few tabloids spun lurid headlines. Poison plot fails? But most focused on her miraculous survival and the brilliance of the medical team. Yet those who had been present knew the truth. It was a night shift janitor who had saved her. Nathan returned to his usual work, pushing his cart down polished corridors. But no one looked through him anymore. Where nurses once offered only curt nods or avoided him altogether, now they smiled. Some whispered, "Thank you," as they passed. A young doctor even stopped. "Nathan, I read your notes." "Impressive." He nodded awkwardly, then continued mopping. Inside, though, a strange feeling stirred. The journey from invisible to seen. No one pinned the word hero to his chest, but the change in their eyes was enough. It was recognition. One afternoon, while Nathan was carefully changing water in the storage room, Dr. Siraj Ahmed appeared in the doorway, arms crossed, a small smile on his face. "You know, I can't stop thinking about that night," Ahmed said. "Without you, we might be planning Sienna Walsh's funeral right now." Nathan shrugged, eyes lowered to his work. "I only did what I thought was right." "Exactly. And it proved something. That knowledge doesn't vanish. It just waits. You studied chemistry, didn't you?" Nathan froze for a moment. "I did, but I dropped out. Life forced me. My wife died. It was just me and Lily. I couldn't be a father and finish school at the same time." Ahmed nodded. His gaze softened. "I understand. But maybe now you can think about going back. There are scholarships, support programs. After what you've done, doors will open. Don't let your mind stop at a mop." Nathan looked down at his calloused hands, hands that had once trembled as a test tube changed color. He said nothing, but inside, a fragile seed of hope began to grow. That night, the small Brooklyn apartment glowed late again. At the table, Lily colored her drawing of the solar system, while Nathan reheated leftover noodles. "Daddy," Lily said, eyes shining, "the nurses told me you saved a really rich person." "Is it true?" Nathan paused, then smiled, sitting down across from her. "Yes, I played a small part. But do you know what's most important?" "What?" "That no one is ever too small to make a difference. Even me, a janitor with a mop, could see what 20 doctors missed. And even you, Lily, with your homework and drawings, you can change the world in your own way." She beamed proudly. "Then, I want to be a scientist, just like you used to be." Nathan laughed, pulling her into a hug. The scent of cheap soap and the warmth of family filled the room, weaving a simple but profound kind of happiness. The next morning, Nathan arrived at work earlier than usual. As he entered the hallway, he saw Sienna Walsh in a wheelchair, slowly pushed by 2 nurses as part of her rehab. Her hair was thin, but her eyes shone brightly. For a fleeting moment, she turned. The familiar pride in her gaze was now tempered with something new. Gratitude. She gave Nathan the smallest of nods. He stopped, bowed his head in return, then quietly went back to his work. For him, that was enough. A week after her condition stabilized, Sienna Walsh left Mount Sinai. Outside, the press swarmed, camera flashes exploding like lightning. Headlines screamed across every paper. Tech billionaire poisoned. Betrayer Damian Cross arrested. Sienna Walsh's miraculous escape. Yet amid all the noise, not a single name mentioned Nathan Price. Nathan kept working the night shift, mopping floors, resetting chairs, tidying cavernous halls. Nurses and doctors now treated him with a newfound respect, but inside he still felt adrift. A single father, a man with an unfinished dream, carrying a secret the outside world would never fully know. Then, one evening, his phone rang. The voice of a woman, unfamiliar but clear, decisive. "Mr. Price, this is Ms. Walsh's assistant. She would like to see you. Tomorrow, Walsh Tower, 45th floor. Can you come?" Nathan froze. His mop clattered softly onto the tiles. Yes. I'll be there." The next day, he put on his oldest shirt, carefully ironed, with the tie slightly frayed but clean. Lily stared at him curiously. "Daddy, are you going to an interview?" Nathan smiled. "No, just an important meeting." Walsh Tower loomed over Manhattan, its steel and glass catching the winter sun. Inside the marble-floored lobby, ceilings stretched skyward. Staff in sharp uniforms moved with precision. But this time, instead of dismissive glances, Nathan was led upstairs with quiet respect. The glass doors opened. Sienna's office filled the entire floor, windows framing Central Park in its entirety. Sienna Walsh sat there, not the frail patient from a hospital bed, but in a pristine white suit, hair cropped short, eyes blazing. "Nathan Price," she said with a hoarse but commanding voice, smiling. "Please, sit." He hesitated before sinking into the leather chair opposite. Sienna studied him for a moment, then placed a file on the table. "You know," she began, "I once believed I controlled everything. Money, power, billion-dollar deals. But when death stood over me, my life depended on a man society didn't even see." Nathan lowered his gaze, awkward. "I only did what I knew was right. And that saved me." She slid the file toward him. "This is a full scholarship to finish your chemistry degree. It includes financial support for Lily, so you don't have to choose between school and fatherhood." Nathan looked up, eyes wide. Inside the file were official documents, signed by the Walsh Foundation Board, committing to cover all tuition, living costs, and a stipend for Lily. I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything. I only invest in talent. And you," Sienna held his gaze firmly, "are a forgotten talent." Nathan swallowed hard. In that moment, he saw not just a return to the classroom he had abandoned, but a promise to the past he had once left behind. Elsewhere in Walsh Tower, a different scene unfolded. The boardroom stretched wide, a long walnut table stacked with laptops and reports. The board of directors sat stern, waiting. Sienna entered, walking with steady strength despite her recent recovery. One shareholder spoke. "Ms. Walsh, the scandal has shaken our stock. Some propose a temporary transfer of power." Sienna's smile was cold. "As long as I breathe, I lead Walsh Global Innovations. Damian Cross has been arrested, the plot exposed, and now I will guide this company with values he never understood: transparency, ethics, and belief in people." The room fell silent. A few bowed their heads in agreement. Sienna stood tall, gaze sweeping across them, reclaiming the authority that was always hers. Meanwhile, Nathan Price stood at the gates of Case Western Reserve University, the place he had left behind 15 years earlier. He no longer wore a janitor's uniform, but a crisp new lab coat. Admission papers in hand, he stepped into a lecture hall, heart pounding like a first-year student. But this time, he wasn't a naive young man. He was a father, a man who had mopped hospital floors, who had seen the fragility of life and the arrogance of science. Younger students looked at him with curiosity. Nathan took a deep breath, sat down, and opened a blank notebook. He knew he had begun again. That night, back in the small Brooklyn apartment, Nathan sat beside Lily at the dinner table. He placed a hand on her shoulder, his voice gentle but steady. "You see, power and knowledge can start from people the world overlooks. The important thing is, never stop believing you have value." Lily's face lit with pride as she hugged him tightly. In her eyes, Nathan was no longer just a tired father coming home from a night shift. He was a living example, the man who turned invisibility into recognition and abandoned knowledge into hope. A month later, Walsh Tower blazed with light on a spring evening. The grand lobby was lined with red carpet, reporters crowding on either side. On a gilded backdrop shone the words, "Interrupted Talent Foundation, Unlocking Opportunities for Interrupted Dreams." The idea was born from the story of Nathan Price, the invisible janitor who saved Sienna Walsh. And now, that story had become the seed of a revolutionary scholarship fund. Inside the hall, chandeliers glittered as hundreds of guests sat in silence. University professors, dropout students, factory workers, night shift nurses, taxi drivers, people who had once buried their academic dreams because of poverty, illness, or family tragedy. On stage, Sienna Walsh appeared in a navy gown, elegant and commanding. Her cropped hair had yet to grow back fully, but her presence radiated more pride than ever. Her voice rang through the hall. "I once believed power meant controlling every variable. But I learned there are moments when your life rests in the hands of someone society refuses to see." Nathan Price reminded me of one truth. Intelligence and dignity can come from anywhere, even the most overlooked places. The hall fell silent for a moment, then erupted into sustained applause. After her speech, the first scholarships were awarded. A middle-aged woman, once a nurse who had abandoned medical school to care for her sick child, accepted her certificate with tears. A young man who worked in a machine shop by day and studied math by night now had the chance to enter university. A single mother who had hidden her passion for biology for 20 years was finally given the chance to return to the classroom. Each face glowed like proof that interrupted does not mean ended. Among the audience, Nathan wore a simple suit, holding Lily's small hand. The girl's eyes sparkled as she whispered, "Daddy, those people. They're just like you, aren't they?" Nathan smiled and nodded. "Yes, sweetheart. And now they'll get the chance to rewrite their stories too." When Sienna stepped down from the stage, she walked toward Nathan. They faced each other, not as billionaire and janitor, but as two people who had crossed the threshold of life and death together. "You know," Sienna said softly, "I once thought I controlled everything, but sometimes we have to learn to trust the people the world never notices." Nathan met her gaze and answered, "And sometimes doing the right thing doesn't just save one life. It opens the way for hundreds more." For a moment, both stood in silence, letting the words echo across the grand hall, past the glass walls of Walsh Tower, and into the Manhattan night sky. Music swelled. On the giant screen behind the stage appeared the words, "Interrupted Talent Foundation, because talent never disappears. It only waits to be seen." Thunderous applause filled the hall. Hundreds of eyes turned toward Sienna and Nathan. In that instant, Nathan felt something he had never dared to dream. He was no longer the invisible shadow. He had become part of something greater, a new legacy for the world. A year passed. The stadium of Case Western Reserve University gleamed under the spring graduation lights. Rows of blue chairs stretched endlessly. Thousands crowded in, flags rippling in the breeze. On stage, the announcer's voice echoed through the speakers. "Nathan Price." The hall erupted in applause. Nathan, in a belated graduation gown, stepped onto the stage, his hair now streaked with silver, his face etched with time, but his eyes burned with pride. He took the diploma into his hands, the very dream he had abandoned 15 years ago, believing it would never return. From the audience, Lily shot up from her seat, running straight toward the stage. Ignoring ceremony, the little girl wrapped her arms tight around her father. "I'm so proud of you, Daddy." Laughter rippled across the hall, followed by a wave of thunderous applause. Cameras clicked furiously, capturing the moment. a single father and his daughter, embracing in the very place where lost dreams had come full circle. In the front row of honored guests, Sienna Walsh sat quietly, clapping steadily. No ventilators, no hospital walls, only a woman whose eyes now held unshakable belief as she watched Nathan complete the journey once denied him. After the ceremony, Nathan chose no grand celebration. He and Lily bought 2 hamburgers from a street vendor and ate on the steps of the university library. They laughed between bites, as if the whole world had finally opened wide for them. "Daddy," Lily said through a mouthful of fries, "so now you're a doctor of toxicology?" Nathan chuckled, ruffling her hair. "Not yet. Just a bachelor's degree. But for us, that alone is a miracle." "Will you keep studying?" she asked, her eyes glimmering in the summer light. He looked at her, voice steady. "Maybe. But what matters most is this. I'll never let you believe that dreams are too far away." One warm summer evening, Nathan stood in a new toxicology lab, wearing a fresh white coat. Rows of test tubes and gleaming instruments surrounded him. His hands moved quickly over the monitors, checking results. This was the dream he once thought had died. On his desk sat a small photo frame, Nathan and Lily in their old kitchen, lit by a dim yellow bulb. An open toxicology book lay beside a box of cold leftovers. Tired faces, but eyes burning with determination. Suddenly, the phone rang. Nathan answered. On the other end, a doctor's urgent voice. "We have a strange case. Symptoms don't match any known protocol. Could you take a look?" Nathan straightened, his voice firm, no hesitation. "This is Nathan Price. How can I help you?" And that was the journey of Nathan Price. From a single father, an invisible janitor in a hospital corridor, to the man who saw what 20 doctors overlooked, saving a billionaire's life and reigniting hope for countless forgotten talents. What do you think? How many people around us carry knowledge, compassion, and hidden abilities, just waiting for the chance to be seen? Share your thoughts in the comments and let us know where you're watching from. I'd love to see how far this story has traveled across the world. If Nathan and Sienna's story touched your heart, hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next stories from True Tale Time. Here, we bring you journeys where the overlooked become the ones who change everything. See you in the next video. And remember, never underestimate the invisible. They see what others miss.